The cockpit was a sealed tomb of pressure and silence, and inside it sat Clint Eastwood, cloaked in the shadows of a jet not meant for American hands. The MiG-31 Firefox, a black, angular monster of Soviet engineering, hummed beneath him like a sleeping beast. Faster than any fighter in existence, nearly invisible to radar and controlled by the pilot's thoughts, it was the future of war. And now it belonged to him. But Clint Eastwood wasn't just flying it. He was about to wield it like a weapon. The altimeter held steady at 80,000 feet, too high for sound, too cold for mercy. Below him stretched a frozen Soviet landscape, indifferent and brutal. Back at Soviet command, red lights were flaring, phones ringing, generals shouting. They had just realized what Clint had done. He had stolen their ghost, their war machine, right from under their noses. And now they were sending hell to get it back. In the eerie silence, Clint's eyes flicked to the radar. A green pulse blinked slowly, then again. Then it turned solid, lock-on. He didn't flinch, because somewhere out there in the vast emptiness of Soviet airspace, another Firefox was coming. The second prototype, its twin, flown by Colonel Voskov, the USSR's coldest ace. Ruthless, precise, raised by the state to kill without conscience. Voskov wasn't coming to intercept. He was coming to erase the man who humiliated his country. Clint leaned back slightly, the leather of his flight suit creaking under pressure. His voice, graveled by age and war, cut through the silence like a knife. Well, here we go. Let's dance. This wasn't just another mission. This was a duel in the upper atmosphere. Two supersonic ghosts locked on a collision course, where the winner would own the sky, and the loser would vanish in fire and metal. Outside the canopy, the upper atmosphere shimmered with cold light. Far in the distance, slicing through a thin trail of cloud, came a glint. Sharp, silver, hungry. The other Firefox. Clint's thoughts sharpened. In this plane, thought was weapon. Think in Russian, he reminded himself. Navedenia. Sistema aktivna. Targeting system online. But he didn't fire, not yet, because the moment hadn't arrived. Not until he could see the whites of the enemy's eyes, or the fire in his engines. The wind whispered nothing. The radar screamed, and the sky waited to bleed. The second Firefox approached fast. Too fast for the human eye, but not fast enough to escape Clint Eastwood's instincts. At this altitude, the sky was pitch black above and icy blue below, a knife's edge where speed tore the heavens open. And at Mach 3, decisions weren't made in seconds. They were made in thoughts. Clint wasn't flying anymore. He was fused to the jet, mind and metal connected through the neural interface. Every nerve in his body was tuned to one thing, survival. And Voskov was coming in hot from the northeast. The Soviet pilot's aircraft streaked across Clint's radar like a bullet. But Clint didn't flinch. He banked left, gently at first, then harder, testing how the Firefox reacted under pressure. The plane responded like a living creature, eager to fight, begging to strike. Then Voskov made the first move. 2 missiles, launched in silence, moving at twice the speed of sound. Clint's head snapped toward the red blips on the HUD. There was no time for panic, only action. With a deep breath, he thought in Russian again. Uklonenie, maksimalny pоворот. Evasive, maximum roll. The Firefox twisted violently to the right, spinning on its axis and dropping altitude by a full 1,000 feet in under a second. The G-forces crushed Clint against the seat, but he held firm, gritting his teeth like a man gripping the edge of a cliff in a hurricane. The missiles screamed past, mere feet away, missing by inches. The sky lit up behind him in a spray of flame. Voskov was good. Very good. But Clint Eastwood wasn't a man who flinched at first blood. He was the kind of man who waited for the second strike and ended the fight before the third. He cut engines for a half-second and dove under a cloud bank, hugging the edge of the jet stream to mask his heat signature. Radar interference, altitude drop, optical cloak engaged. The Soviets had built this plane to dominate wars. Clint was about to show them how to win one. Voskov overshot the position, expecting Eastwood to climb, but he was already below him, rising again like a serpent. Now Clint had lock-on. Zapusk Rakete, Одна missile launch, 1. The left missile bay opened silently. The missile fired. A streak of white flame tore across the sky toward Voskov's undercarriage. Explosion, smoke, sparks, but not a kill. Voskov had banked hard and took minor damage, but now both jets were fully visible, fully locked, and diving straight at each other, a game of chicken at speeds so high they could burn the air itself. 2 missiles left. One decision. Who blinks first? The roar of the jet engines faded beneath the pounding of Clint Eastwood's heart. At this altitude and speed, the sky was no longer a place. It was a battlefield of wits and reflexes, where seconds stretched into eternities, and a single mistake meant death. But this wasn't just a dogfight anymore. This was a war fought inside the mind. The MiG-31 Firefox was unlike any fighter ever built. It responded not to buttons or joysticks, but to the pilot's thoughts, faster, sharper, deadlier. Clint could feel the connection flowing like electricity through his nerves. Every command was mental, every move instantaneous. But so was Voskov's. Across the stratosphere, 2 pilots were engaged in a dance of death, their planes spiraling, twisting, and diving, as if pulled by invisible threads. Clint knew Voskov was a master of the same technology, born and raised in the Soviet system, trained since childhood to merge with his machine. Every evasive maneuver Voskov made was a challenge. Every missile fired was a question demanding a perfect answer. And Clint was ready to reply. His mind raced, shifting through Russian commands and tactical calculations with a warrior's precision. He visualized the jet as an extension of himself, an aggressive ghost slicing through the sky, blending raw speed with razor-sharp strategy. Перехват цели. Intercept target. Suddenly, the enemy's jet vanished behind a sudden cloud bank, Voskov trying to break Clint's lock and gain the upper hand. But Clint was no stranger to the unexpected. He anticipated the move, sending a burst of mental commands to the Firefox's advanced radar and infrared sensors, tracking Voskov's heat signature through the fog, like a hunter zeroing in on prey. The 2 jets broke through the clouds in a sudden burst, engines screaming, locked on each other once more. Clint fired again, this time a missile, streaking with deadly precision. But Voskov twisted at the last second, dodging narrowly. Smoke trailed both machines now, both pilots pushing their jets to the edge of their capabilities and beyond. Clint's voice was calm, his hands steady on the flight controls despite the chaos. He wasn't just fighting a pilot. He was fighting the very mind that commanded the jet. The thought war had begun. And only one would emerge victorious. Clint Eastwood's breath hitched as the 2 Firefox jets locked eyes across the empty sky, each man knowing that only one would leave this fight alive. The air crackled with tension, an invisible war raging above the Soviet tundra at breakneck speed. Voskov was relentless, circling, pushing his jet to extremes Clint hadn't dared until now. The second missile streaked from Voskov's launcher, a fiery dart aimed straight at Clint's tail. But Clint was already thinking 3 steps ahead. With lightning reflexes, he triggered the Firefox's neural interface, weaving his thoughts with razor precision. Uklanitsa, Reskov knees, evade, sharp dive. The jet plunged, a blur against the cobalt sky, diving into a narrow canyon barely visible through the clouds. The missile streaked past, exploding harmlessly against the rocky cliffs below. But the canyon was a trap. Clint's jet screamed as he hugged the jagged cliffs, banking hard, forcing Voskov to follow or lose his target. The enemy pilot, trapped in the narrow valley, hesitated for a fraction too long. That was all Clint needed. His mind synced perfectly with the Firefox's weapon systems. He locked on, breath steady, eyes fierce. In an instant, Clint launched the last missile. Time slowed. The missile tore through the thin air, closing the distance with deadly accuracy. Voskov saw it coming. Too late. Explosion. Fireball. Silence. Clint climbed out of the canyon, the Soviet wilderness stretching below him. His jet's instruments flickered with minor damage, but he was still flying. He'd stolen the Soviet Ghost, won the impossible duel, and escaped. Back in America, Clint Eastwood would be a hero once more, the man who flew the unthinkable mission and came back alive. But in the cold, high skies over Russia, he was simply a pilot who refused to lose. The distant echoes of the explosion still vibrated through the cold air, but Clint Eastwood didn't dare slow down. The battered Firefox roared as it sliced through the darkening sky, leaving behind the smoking remains of his ruthless opponent, Colonel Voskov. The battle had been brutal, a lethal dance between two of the deadliest pilots alive, but Clint's skill, courage, and sheer willpower had turned the tide. Below, the vast expanse of the Soviet wilderness stretched endlessly, frozen forests, jagged mountain ridges, and icy rivers shimmering under the faint light of a fading sun. Clint knew that every second counted. Soviet radar systems would soon realize their prized jet was gone, and search and destroy missions would follow. He was a ghost now, hunted and alone in hostile skies. Yet, Clint Eastwood remained calm, his nerves sharpened by decades of hardship and survival. This was more than a mission. It was a fight for freedom and truth in a world shadowed by mistrust and Cold War secrets. With every breath, every calculated maneuver, Clint wove his way through narrow valleys and under radar coverage, pushing the Firefox to its limits. His hands moved with the precision of a master craftsman, but his mind was miles ahead, planning his next move even as he felt the plane's engine whining in protest. The neural interface pulsed softly against his temples, a constant reminder of the fragile link between man and machine. Suddenly, ahead, a break in the clouds revealed the first glimmers of twilight on the horizon. Freedom was near. Clint allowed himself a rare moment of reflection. This jet, the prize stolen from the Soviets, represented the cutting edge of technology and power, but more importantly, it symbolized a chance to shift the balance, to prevent a world at the brink of disaster from spiraling further into chaos. As the ground below became more familiar, Clint dialed in a secure frequency, sending a brief, coded message to his American handlers. Firefox acquired, returning to base. Mission success, no casualties. Relief was a luxury he didn't allow himself, not yet. His jet pierced through the last wisps of cloud and descended into the night sky, fading like a shadow swallowed by darkness. Clint Eastwood, the legendary pilot, had vanished into the night, leaving behind a legacy of bravery, precision, and unmatched resolve. But for those who understood the true cost of this silent war, one thing was clear: the skies would never be the same again.